there exists a peculiar poison that tastes like medicine. From the moment you could understand language, they fed it to you drop by drop, teaching you that your greatest strength would come from making yourself smaller. They wrapped this poison in beautiful words like virtue, maturity, and wisdom, telling you that the truly powerful man is the one who never needs to announce his power. This lie has destroyed more potential kings than all the wars in history combined. It operates through a simple mechanism that hijacks your natural instincts for dominance and redirects them inward, turning your own strength into a cage. The tragedy is not that you believed them, but that you became so skilled at performing this self-reduction that you forgot it was a performance at all. Consider for a moment the last time you achieved something significant. Notice how quickly your mind rushed to minimize it, to share the credit, to explain why it was not really that impressive. This reflex did not come from nowhere. It was installed in you through thousands of small corrections, each one teaching you that pride is dangerous, that ownership is arrogance, that standing tall makes you a target. But targets are only vulnerable when they apologize for being seen. The arrow finds the deer that freezes, not the one that moves with purpose. And you have been trained to freeze, to lower your eyes, to make yourself small enough that no one feels threatened by your existence. This is not protection. This is a slow form of suicide that leaves you breathing, but erases everything that makes you formidable. The historical record offers us a different lesson entirely. Alexander did not conquer the known world by crediting his victories to luck and the gods. He declared himself a god and made the world believe it through sheer force of presence. When he walked into a room, men did not see a young Macedonian general. They saw inevitability itself, clothed in flesh and armed with absolute certainty. Napoleon understood this same principle when he crowned himself emperor. The Pope was present, ready to perform the traditional ceremony, but Napoleon took the crown from his hands and placed it on his own head. This was not mere theatrics. It was a declaration that his power came from no one but himself, that he needed no permission to rule, no validation from tradition or ceremony. These men were not loved for their humility. They were followed because they made following them feel like participating in destiny. They understood that power does not flow toward those who question their right to wield it. It consolidates around those who act as if their authority is a law of nature, as obvious and undeniable as gravity itself. Yet in the modern world, we have inverted this wisdom entirely. The conference room has become a theater where the most capable performers compete to see who can appear least threatening. The man with the best idea waits for someone else to speak first. The one who solved the crisis makes sure to thank the team for their support, even if they contributed nothing. The leader who saved the company from collapse speaks of lucky timing and favorable market conditions. This is not leadership. This is a masquerade where everyone pretends to be less than they are, hoping that their pretense will somehow be rewarded with recognition. But recognition does not come to those who hide their light under carefully constructed modesty. It goes to those who let their competence shine without apology, who speak their achievements into the record without flinching. The psychology behind this is devastatingly simple. The human mind does not process humility as virtue. It processes it as uncertainty. When you downplay your accomplishments, people do not think you are being modest. They think you are telling them the truth about your limitations. When you share credit that belongs solely to you, they do not see generosity. They see admission that you could not have done it alone. Every time you say the words, "I got lucky," after a victory, you plant a seed of doubt about your competence. Every time you deflect praise with, "It was a team effort," you train others to see you as just another cog in the machine. Every time you wait for permission to speak your truth, you teach the room that your truth requires permission. The corporate world has perfected this system of voluntary diminishment. They call it culture fit, team dynamics, collaborative leadership. But strip away the language, and what remains is a structure designed to make you grateful for scraps while someone bolder takes the feast. The humble employee gets the positive performance review. The one who names his value gets the promotion. Watch carefully the next time you are in a meeting where decisions are being made. Notice who speaks first, who speaks longest, who interrupts without apology. Notice whose ideas become the final strategy, regardless of who might have whispered them first. The pattern is unmistakable. Authority flows toward those who claim it, not those who deserve it. This creates a peculiar form of tragedy where the most competent often watch from the sidelines while the most confident take the field. The expert who spent decades mastering his craft speaks tentatively, hedging every statement with, "I think," and "perhaps." Meanwhile, someone with half his knowledge, but twice his certainty commands the room with declarations and decisiveness. The difference between these two men is not competence. It is the willingness to be seen as competent. One has been trained to hide his expertise behind a veil of artificial uncertainty. The other has learned that certainty itself is a form of currency, that confidence compounds like interest, that the appearance of authority often becomes authority through the simple mechanism of belief. Think about the meetings you have attended where your solution was obvious, where your expertise was precisely what the moment required, but you waited. You waited for the right moment, for someone to ask your opinion, for the conversation to naturally flow toward your area of knowledge. And while you waited, someone else spoke. They offered an inferior solution with superior conviction, and the room moved with them while you sat there knowing better but saying nothing. This is what humility costs you. Not just opportunity, but the compound effect of missed opportunities. Each time you fail to claim your space, you make it easier to fade into the background the next time. Each time you let someone else take credit for your thinking, you train yourself to accept theft as normal. Each time you minimize your achievements, you make it harder to recognize your own value. The distinction between strategic silence and self-erasure is critical to understand. Strategic silence is a weapon. It is the pause before the strike, the held breath before the declaration. It is silence with intention, silence that builds tension, silence that makes your eventual words carry the weight of mountains. This is not humility. This is mastery of timing. Self-erasure, on the other hand, is silence born from fear. Fear of being seen as arrogant, fear of making others uncomfortable, fear of claiming more than your designated share. This silence does not build tension. It dissipates your presence until you become background noise in your own life. This is what they taught you was virtue, but it is actually a form of voluntary invisibility. The executive who sits quietly through the entire meeting, then speaks once with perfect clarity and shifts the entire discussion, that is strategic silence. The executive who has the answer but never shares it because he does not want to seem pushy, that is self-erasure. One is power held in reserve. The other is power surrendered without a fight. Consider how you have been trained to view ambition itself. They told you it was something to hide, something slightly shameful, something that needed to be balanced with false modesty to be palatable. But ambition is simply the recognition of your own capability combined with the will to manifest it. There is nothing shameful about knowing what you can build and wanting to build it. Yet you have learned to couch your ambition in soft language, to pretend your goals are smaller than they are, to act surprised when you achieve what you always knew you could achieve. This performance of false modesty does not make you noble. It makes you forgettable. It turns your edge into a cushion, your sword into a decoration. The most insidious part of this programming is how it makes you complicit in your own diminishment. You become the guard of your own prison, the enforcer of your own limitations. You police yourself more harshly than any external force ever could, constantly checking whether you are taking up too much space, speaking too confidently, claiming too much credit. Picture a negotiation table where millions hang in the balance. 5 executives sit on each side, folders thick with data, minds sharp with strategy. But watch closely and you will see that the real negotiation is not happening between the two sides. It is happening between those who apologize for their presence and those who own it completely. The humble negotiator begins his sentences with softening phrases. He says, "I could be wrong," but before presenting ironclad data. He says, "You might have already considered this," before unveiling a breakthrough insight. He distributes his power across the table like breadcrumbs, hoping someone will notice his generosity and reward it with respect. Across from him sits a different species entirely. This negotiator does not ask permission to speak truth. He states terms with the certainty of someone reading from natural law. He does not say, "I think we should consider." He says, "Here is what needs to happen." His proposals are not suggestions. They are architecture for the future, presented as if that future has already been decided. Power recognizes power through frequency, not through words. It is a vibration that either harmonizes or creates dissonance. When you enter a room radiating uncertainty, even if that uncertainty is performed humility, you create static in the power frequency. Those who operate on the wavelength of dominance cannot hear you clearly. You become background noise, regardless of the brilliance of your ideas. This is why the most qualified candidate often loses to the most certain one. Qualification is data, certainty is presence. And in the arithmetic of power, presence multiplies while data merely adds. A mediocre idea delivered with absolute conviction will defeat a brilliant idea whispered with apology every single time. The false equation that confidence equals arrogance has crippled more leaders than any external enemy could. Confidence is not about believing you are better than everyone else. It is about believing you belong exactly where you stand, that your voice has weight, that your thoughts deserve air. Arrogance assumes superiority. Confidence assumes a quality of right to speak, to claim, to build. When you walk into a room believing you belong there, you change the molecular structure of that room. When you walk in wondering if you deserve to be there, you become a question mark in a space that demands exclamation points. The room does not care about your internal struggles with imposter syndrome. It responds only to the energy you project. Consider the young consultant who joins a firm full of veterans. She has two choices. She can spend years being deferential, waiting her turn, hoping seniority will eventually grant her permission to be brilliant. Or she can speak her insights with the same conviction as someone with decades of experience, forcing the room to evaluate her ideas on merit rather than on timeline. The veterans will test her. They always do. They will probe for weakness, for the crack that reveals she knows her place is at the bottom of the hierarchy. If she provides that crack through false humility, through unnecessary deference, through the apologetic tone of someone who feels lucky just to be included, they will exploit it. Not from malice, but from the natural law that power flows away from uncertainty. But if she holds her ground, if she speaks her analysis without seeking permission, if she treats her freshness as an asset rather than a liability, something shifts. The veteran stops seeing her as a junior to be managed and starts seeing her as a force to be reckoned with. She becomes a player rather than a trainee, not through time served, but through presence claimed. The throne room dynamic plays out in every organization, though the throne may be disguised as a corner office or a board seat. The loyal servant who has given decades to the kingdom watches as a newcomer arrives, and within months sits closer to the throne than he ever has. The servant rages about unfairness, about dues not paid, about experience not valued. But the throne does not recognize service. It recognizes power, and power is not accumulated through time. It is declared through presence. The newcomer understood something the servant never learned. That proximity to power is not earned through patient suffering. It is taken through strategic positioning and the audacity to belong where others believe you should not. This is why the assistant who fetches coffee for 5 years remains an assistant, while the new hire who refuses to fetch coffee becomes a director. One accepted a role. The other created one. One believed in earning through service. The other believed in claiming through declaration. The organization did not reward the second person for arrogance. It responded to their refusal to be diminished. Every time you accept less than you are worth, you teach the system your price. Every time you do work without claiming credit, you train others to see you as a resource rather than a leader. Every time you soften your expertise to make others comfortable, you educate them that your knowledge is negotiable, optional, dismissible. The feedback loop this creates is devastating. You undervalue yourself, so others undervalue you. Their undervaluation confirms your belief that you should be humble. Your increased humility leads to greater invisibility. Greater invisibility leads to fewer opportunities. Fewer opportunities confirm that you are right to be humble, because clearly you are not ready for more. This spiral continues until you become exactly what you pretended to be. Someone small, someone supporting, someone whose greatest achievement is not threatening anyone with your potential. You become the proof of your own false modesty, the living evidence that you are right to diminish yourself, because look how diminished you have become. The wolf and sheep psychology that governs social hierarchies is not about cruelty. It is about recognition. Wolves recognize other wolves through posture, through movement, through the way they occupy space. Sheep recognize other sheep through their huddling, through their deference, through their acceptance of boundaries. When you enter any social or professional space, you are immediately categorized. Not consciously, not deliberately, but through the ancient patterns that govern how humans assess threat and opportunity. Do you move like something that takes what it needs, or like something that waits to be fed? Do you speak like someone who shapes reality, or like someone who accepts it? The answer to these questions determines everything that follows. If you are categorized as sheep, you will be treated with the casual disregard reserved for those who pose no threat and offer no significant opportunity. You will be managed, directed, used. If you are categorized as wolf, you will be treated with the respect reserved for those who might be dangerous if crossed, valuable if allied. This categorization happens in seconds and is nearly impossible to reverse once established. This is why first impressions matter more than fairness would suggest. The energy you project in your first interaction becomes the lens through which all future interactions are viewed. Start weak and every strength is seen as an anomaly. Start strong and every weakness is seen as strategic restraint. The sheep who tries to become wolf faces skepticism and resistance. The system has already allocated his role, distributed the power accordingly, established the dynamics that keep him in place. His attempts to claim more space are seen as uppity, inappropriate, almost comedic. He is reminded, subtly and not so subtly, that sheep do not become wolves just by deciding to. But the wolf who enters as wolf faces no such resistance. His claiming of space is expected. His assertions are natural. His dominance is not questioned because it was never presented as questionable. He did not ask if he could be wolf. He simply was, and the system adjusted to accommodate what already existed. This is why the mythology of working your way up through humility is so toxic. It assumes that power is a ladder. You climb rung by rung, that patience and service will eventually deliver you to authority. But power is not a ladder. It is a declaration. You do not climb to it. You claim it where you stand and force the structure to reconfigure around your presence. The manager who started in the mailroom and worked his way up over 20 years tells his story as inspiration. But he leaves out the moment when he stopped being humble, when he stopped being grateful just to be included, when he started moving like someone who expected to lead rather than follow. That moment, not the years of service, was when his ascent truly began. The recognition of power by power operates through subtle signals that humility obscures. The way you hold silence before speaking, not from uncertainty, but from the confidence that when you speak, the room will quiet. The way you make eye contact, not aggressively, but without the need to look away first. The way you state prices, terms, boundaries, without immediate justification or apology. These signals are not arrogance. They are communication in the language of authority. And those who speak this language recognize each other instantly, forming alliances, making deals, sharing opportunities in a realm that the humble never even know exists. While you are waiting for someone to notice your quiet excellence, they are dividing the kingdom among those who had the audacity to say they wanted it. The cost of waiting for permission is not measured in missed opportunities alone. It compounds into something far more insidious, a gradual numbing of your instincts until you no longer recognize the moments when you should strike. You develop a reflex for hesitation, a muscle memory for stepping back, a trained response that kicks in precisely when you should be stepping forward. Every door you do not walk through becomes a ghost that haunts your future decisions. Every time you wait for invitation instead of entering, you strengthen the neural pathway that says you need approval to exist at full capacity. This creates a peculiar form of paralysis, where you become an expert at preparing but never performing, at planning but never executing, at knowing but never declaring. The rewards of declaration, by contrast, compound in the opposite direction. Each time you claim space without apology, you make it easier to claim more. Each time you speak without seeking permission, you train your voice to carry authority. Each time you move as if you belong, you reshape your nervous system to support expansion rather than contraction. Consider the entrepreneur who spends years perfecting his business plan, waiting for the perfect moment, the ideal funding, the risk-free opportunity. Beside him stands another who launches with half a plan but total commitment. The first man calls the second reckless. But while he refines his theoretical empire, the other is building an actual one, learning from collision with reality rather than from collision with his own doubts. The market does not care about your perfect plan. It responds to what exists, what moves, what takes up space in the world. The humble entrepreneur waits for the market to tell him he is ready. The declarative entrepreneur tells the market he has arrived and forces it to respond. One asks permission from reality. The other shapes it. This same dynamic plays out in every arena where power is contested. The artist who waits for galleries to discover him versus the one who declares himself discovered and creates his own exhibitions. The writer who queries agents for years versus the one who publishes and forces the industry to notice. The employee who waits for promotion versus the one who performs at the next level until the title has no choice but to follow. Restraint and humility are twins wearing different masks, but only one is your ally. Restraint is the tiger who waits in stillness, not from weakness, but from the knowledge that stillness makes the strike more devastating. It is power held in reserve, energy conserved for the moment of maximum impact. It is the pause that makes the next note in the symphony carry the weight of mountains. Humility, as it has been sold to you, is something else entirely. It is not strategic withholding, but systematic erasure. It is not the tiger waiting to pounce, but the tiger convinced he is a house cat, filing down his own claws to avoid seeming threatening. It is not power in reserve, but power in retreat, constantly backing away from its own potential. The restrained man chooses when to reveal his strength. The humble man forgets he has strength to reveal. The restrained man creates tension through his silence. The humble man creates vacuum through his absence. The restrained man makes others lean in. The humble man makes others look past him. Watch a master negotiator operate, and you will see restraint in action. He does not reveal his full position immediately. He does not show all his cards. He does not fill every silence with words. But this is not humility. This is strategy. He is not making himself small. He is making his eventual revelation larger through contrast. The architecture of presence is built on a foundation that humility cannot provide. It requires the bedrock of certainty, not in your superiority, but in your right to exist at full magnitude. From this foundation rises a structure of intentional choices, each one reinforcing your solidity in space. Your voice becomes an instrument of presence when you stop apologizing for its sound. Not through volume, but through conviction. The man who speaks quietly, but with absolute certainty, commands more attention than the one who shouts with doubt. Your words carry weight, not when you say more, but when what you say cannot be ignored. Your physical presence expands not through size, but through density. You occupy your space completely, without apology, but also without aggression. You move with purpose rather than permission. You stand as if the ground beneath you was always meant to support your weight. You sit as if the chair was built for your frame. Your energetic presence radiates not through effort, but through allowance. You stop pulling yourself inward to make others comfortable. You stop dimming your intelligence to avoid intimidation. You stop fracturing your focus to appear accessible. You become singular, unified, undiluted. This architecture creates gravity without noise. People find themselves drawn into your orbit, not because you demanded their attention, but because presence itself is magnetic. It bends space around it, creates its own weather system, shifts the dynamics of every room it enters without saying a word about doing so. The men who change history do not do so by being likable. They do so by being undeniable. They create such presence that the world must reconfigure itself around them, not through force, but through the simple fact of their existence at full capacity. They do not ask the world to make room. They expand and the world adjusts. But building this architecture requires demolition first. You must destroy the part of you that seeks approval for being small, that feels noble in its self-diminishment, that has confused invisibility with virtue. This part will not die quietly. It will remind you of every time someone called you humble and meant it as compliment. It will warn you about the dangers of being seen as difficult, ambitious, threatening. This internal resistance is the last guard of a prison you built yourself. It speaks in the voice of everyone who ever benefited from your smallness, everyone who needed you diminished to feel secure. It tells you that wanting recognition is shallow, that claiming credit is crass, that standing tall is arrogant. It fights for its survival by convincing you that your survival depends on staying hidden. But what it really fears is your transformation into something that cannot be controlled through social pressure. Once you stop seeking approval for being small, you become immune to the management techniques that keep most people in line. Guilt stops working when you refuse to feel guilty for your strength. Shame stops working when you refuse to be ashamed of your ambition. The killing of this part is not violent. It is decisive. You do not argue with it or negotiate terms. You simply stop feeding it. Every time it tells you to shrink, you expand. Every time it tells you to apologize, you declare. Every time it tells you to wait, you move. You starve it through opposite action until it weakens and finally goes silent. What emerges in its place is something more dangerous than arrogance could ever be. It is clarity. Clarity about what you want, what you offer, what you will accept. Clarity that needs no justification, no permission, no validation. Clarity that moves through the world like a blade, cutting through the fog of social pretense and hierarchical games. This clarity terrifies those who depend on your confusion. Your uncertainty was their opportunity. Your humility was their advantage. Your hesitation was their opening. When you become clear, you become unmanageable. When you become unmanageable, you become powerful. When you become powerful, you become free. The final choice you face is not actually a choice at all. It is a recognition of what has already been decided by every small surrender, every withheld truth, every swallowed credit, every performed smallness. You have been choosing all along. The question is whether you will continue choosing the same. Being liked for compliance is a form of death that leaves you breathing. You become a supporting character in your own story, appreciated for how little space you take up, valued for how little threat you pose. They will speak well of you at your funeral, talking about how humble you were, how you never made anyone uncomfortable, how you always put others first. Being respected for command is a form of life that requires courage. You become the author of your own narrative, feared perhaps, envied certainly, but never ignored. They may not speak well of you at your funeral, but they will speak of you. They will remember the space you claimed, the authority you wielded, the reality you bent through presence alone. The humble man dies twice, once when he surrenders his power, and again when his body follows suit. The commanding man dies only once, and even then, his presence echoes in the space he carved out of the world. His death is event. The humble man's death is a footnote. So the question becomes simple. Will you continue to practice the slow suicide of self-erasure, perfecting your performance of smallness until you forget you are performing? Will you keep waiting for permission that will never come, for recognition that cannot find you in your hiding place, for power that does not flow toward apology? Or will you accept the cost of presence, the weight of being seen, the responsibility of taking up space? Will you speak without seeking approval, move without requesting clearance, claim without apologizing? Will you become what you always were before they taught you to be less? The world is full of humble men, and it forgets them daily. They blend into the background of history, their potential buried under their politeness, their brilliance hidden beneath their hesitation. They lived, supposedly, but they never truly occupied space. They existed, technically, but they never truly impressed themselves upon reality. You are not born to be one of them. You were born to be undeniable. The only question is whether you will accept this truth or continue to perform the lie that shrinking yourself somehow makes you good. Goodness has nothing to do with size. It has everything to do with truth. And the truth is that you playing small serves no one, least of all yourself. The architecture of your presence awaits construction. The blueprint exists in your bones. All that remains is the decision to build, to claim the space you were always meant to occupy, to speak the truths you were always meant to voice, to become the force you were always meant to be. The meek may inherit the earth, but only after the bold have finished shaping it. And you must decide, here and now, which you intend to be. The choice is yours, but understand that choosing humility is still a choice, and every choice has consequences that compound over time until they become your story. Make sure it is a story worth telling. Make sure it is a story where you are the protagonist, not the footnote. Make sure it is a story of expansion rather than contraction, of claiming rather than waiting, of presence rather than apology. Because in the end, the world will not remember your humility. It will remember your impact, or it will not remember you at all.